He thought I had nothing, no money, no status, no family name worth mentioning. So he made me the dinner table joke for 8 years. Then my husband raised his glass and said, "To Anna, the backward one." That was the last lie he ever told about me. Then I opened my purse, and my lawyer walked through the door. They don't know it yet, but this dinner is their last supper. My name is Anna, and for 8 years I let my own husband believe I was poor. That sounds strange, I know. But you have to understand something about me. I grew up with money, big money, old money. The kind of money that buys you silence instead of noise, privacy instead of parties. My grandfather founded a shipping company that turned into a logistics empire. My father grew that empire into something even bigger. By the time I was 21, I had a trust fund so large that I couldn't spend it all if I tried for 100 years. But I hated what money did to people. I watched my parents become paranoid. I watched my cousins turn into monsters who saw other human beings as stepping stones. I watched my aunt cry at every family gathering because she didn't know if her husband married her for love or for her portfolio. So when I turned 25, I made a decision. I walked away from the family name. Not completely. I kept my inheritance, of course. I wasn't stupid. But I hid it. I lived like a normal person. I rented a small apartment in a regular neighborhood. I wore clothes from Target. I drove a used Honda. And I told no one about the millions sitting in accounts under a different name. Then I met Matthew. Matthew was handsome in that safe, boring way. He worked in marketing. He wore khakis. He told the same 3 jokes at every party. But he was kind to me, or at least I thought he was kind. He didn't care that I worked as a part-time librarian. He didn't care that I drove an old car. He said he loved my simplicity. He said I was real. He said I was nothing like the fake, materialistic women he had dated before. I fell for it. Hard. We got married 6 months after we met. Small wedding. My family wanted to throw a massive event, but I said no. I told Matthew my parents were middle class and couldn't afford much. He believed me. Why wouldn't he? I had become very good at hiding. The trouble started with his family. The Crandalls. Oh, where do I begin with the Crandalls? Matthew's mother, Patricia, was a thin woman with sharp eyes and sharper opinions. She lived in a large house in the suburbs that was always too cold because she refused to turn up the heat. She thought she was better than everyone because her grandfather had owned a car dealership. That was her entire identity. A car dealership that went out of business in 1987. But in her mind, she was royalty. Matthew's father, Richard, was quieter. He didn't say much. He just sat in his armchair and watched sports and let his wife run everything. He was not a bad man. He was just a ghost. And then there was Matthew's sister, Claire. Claire was everything Patricia wished she had been at 30, married to a dentist, 2 perfect children, a house with a white fence. Claire looked at me the way you look at a stain on a white shirt, with disappointment and a little bit of disgust. The first time I met the Crandalls for Sunday dinner, Patricia asked me what my father did for a living. I said he was retired. She asked what he did before he retired. I said he worked in logistics. She nodded slowly, as if logistics was a fancy word for truck driver. Then she asked where I went to college. I said a small state school. She said, "Oh, how nice," as if I had told her I studied at a community center. Matthew never defended me. He just sat there, eating his roast beef, pretending not to notice. When I brought it up later, he said, "That's just how Mom is. You'll get used to it." I didn't get used to it. But I loved Matthew, so I tried. I tried for 8 years. 8 years of Sunday dinners where Patricia made comments about my clothes. "Anna, dear, is that the same sweater you wore last time?" 8 years of Claire showing off her new diamonds while looking at my bare fingers. "Don't you ever treat yourself, Anna? Or does Matthew not let you?" 8 years of Richard's silence, which somehow hurt more than all the words. Through all of it, I stayed quiet. I held Matthew's hand under the table. I smiled. I helped with the dishes. I was the perfect, poor, grateful daughter-in-law. And every night, I went home to my small apartment and looked at my bank accounts online. Millions and millions of dollars sitting there, waiting for me to use them. But I didn't use them. Because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I owned. What a fool I was. The dinner that changed everything happened on a rainy Sunday in November. The leaves were gone from the trees. The sky was that dark gray that makes you feel like the sun might never come back. Matthew and I drove to his parents' house in my old Honda. He complained about the car the whole way. "When are you going to let me buy you something decent?" he said. "It's embarrassing." I didn't answer. I just watched the rain on the windshield and thought about how much I loved the sound of it. Patricia had outdone herself that night. The table was set with her good china. The silverware was polished. There were candles, and there were guests. Matthew's Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda. Claire's husband, the dentist, whose name was Frank but everyone called him Dr. Frank because Claire insisted. And two of Patricia's bridge club friends, women whose names I never remembered because they changed their hair so often. I was seated at the end of the table. The end. Not next to Matthew, who was at the head next to his father. No, I was at the foot, next to the kitchen door, where Patricia could ask me to get things without having to stand up. Dinner started fine. Soup, salad, the usual small talk about interest rates and real estate and who had gotten a new car. I ate quietly. I nodded when people spoke to me. I said things like, "That's nice," and "How interesting," and "Pass the salt, please." Then came the main course. Roast lamb, Patricia's specialty. She spent 20 minutes telling everyone about how she had ordered the lamb from a special butcher who only sold to certain people. I didn't know what that meant, but I smiled and ate my lamb. And then Matthew cleared his throat. I should have known something was wrong. He had that look on his face. The look he got when he had been drinking with his coworkers and wanted to show off. The look that said, "Watch this, everybody." "So, Mom," he said, wiping his mouth with his napkin. "Anna did something really funny the other day." Patricia raised one eyebrow. Claire leaned forward. Even Richard looked up from his plate. "What did she do?" Patricia asked, as if I wasn't sitting right there. Matthew laughed, not a kind laugh. A mean laugh. The kind of laugh you hear in high school hallways when someone trips in front of the lockers. We were at the mall, right? Just walking around. And she sees this purse in a store window. A nice purse. Leather. Good brand. $1,000 maybe, nothing crazy. And do you know what she said? "What?" Claire said, grinning. She said, "That's too expensive. I'll never afford something like that." Matthew paused for effect. $1,000. And she acted like I was asking her to buy a yacht. Patricia laughed, a high, sharp laugh that cut through the room. "Oh, Anna, you are something else." Claire joined in. "Honey, don't you have any taste at all? Or are you just too cheap to buy nice things?" I felt my face get hot, but I didn't speak. I never spoke. Matthew wasn't done. He was enjoying himself. The whole table was watching him, waiting for the next joke at my expense. He looked at his mother, then at his sister, then at Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda and the bridge club ladies. He was performing, and I was the clown. "Remember our honeymoon?" Matthew said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "We went to that little bed and breakfast in Maine, nothing fancy, just a place with a view of the water. And Anna spent the whole time taking photos of the seagulls. Not the ocean, not the sunsets, the seagulls. Like she had never seen a bird before." Claire snorted. "Oh my God. And the way she dresses," Matthew continued. He pointed at my sweater. My plain gray sweater that I had bought for $20 at a discount store. "Look at her. Sitting there in that rag. I have tried everyone. I have tried to get her to buy real clothes, real shoes, but she won't. She says she likes being comfortable. She says she doesn't need fancy things." Patricia shook her head slowly, like a disappointed teacher. "Some people just don't have the gene, Matthew. You can't teach class." That word, class. Patricia Crandall, whose family fortune came from a used car lot, talking to me about class. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just sat there, gripping my fork, telling myself to breathe. Matthew leaned back in his chair. He was glowing with attention. "The thing is," he said, "I married her because I thought she was humble, you know, down to earth, but now I think she's just backward." The word hung in the air like smoke. Backward. He called me backward, in front of his whole family, at his mother's dinner table, with candles and good china and roast lamb that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Claire nodded. "That's the perfect word for her, actually. Backward." Uncle Bob chuckled. Aunt Linda looked at her plate. The bridge club ladies exchanged glances, but no one defended me. Not one person at that table said, "That's not fair," or "Leave her alone," or "Anna is a good person." And Matthew, my husband, the man I had shared a bed with for 8 years, he just smiled and took another bite of lamb. That was the moment something inside me cracked open. Not broke. Cracked. like a seed cracking open before it grows. Because in that crack, I finally saw the truth. Matthew didn't love me. He never loved me. He loved the idea of me. The poor, simple, grateful girl who made him feel rich and smart and important. He loved having someone smaller than him, someone he could mock at dinner parties, someone he could use as a punchline. I finished my meal. I helped clear the plates. I said goodnight to everyone. I smiled. I was perfect. And then I got into my old Honda and drove home in silence while Matthew scrolled through his phone and complained about the rain. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room in the dark and I made a plan. You see, the Crandalls didn't know about me. None of them. They thought I was a poor librarian from a nothing family. They thought I was lucky to have married Matthew. They thought I was backward, but I wasn't backward. I was Anna, and Anna had a secret. The next morning, I got up before Matthew. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, which was small and wobbly because one leg was shorter than the others, and I opened my laptop. I logged into the bank account that no one knew about, the one with my real name, Anna Marie Whitmore, not Anna Crandall. I had never changed my last name legally, though I let Matthew's family call me Mrs. Crandall. Another lie I told to keep the peace. The balance made me calm. $7 million in liquid cash. Another $12 million in investments, plus properties. 3 properties to be exact. A condo in Manhattan that my grandmother left me. A cabin in Vermont that my father bought for my mother before she died. And a small beach house in California that I had purchased myself 5 years ago, just because I wanted to feel the ocean whenever I needed to. I had never told Matthew about any of this. Not because I was trying to deceive him, but because I wanted to be sure he loved me for me. And now I knew the truth. He didn't love me at all. He loved the version of me that made him feel superior. So I called my lawyer, not a regular lawyer. The family lawyer, Mr. Harrington, a gray-haired man in his 70s who had worked for my grandfather and my father and now worked for me. He answered on the first ring. Anna, he said, it's been a while, what do you need? I need a divorce, I said, and I need it fast, but first I need you to come to a dinner. Dinner, he said. A family dinner, I said. At my in-laws' house. Next Sunday, can you be there? Mr. Harrington didn't ask questions. He had worked for the Whitmore family too long to ask questions. I'll be there, he said. What should I wear? Something expensive, I said. And bring the files, all of them, the trust documents, the property deeds, the investment portfolios, everything. He paused. Are you sure, Anna? Once they know, they'll never see you the same way. I know, I said. That's the point. The next 6 days were the longest of my life. I went to work, I made dinner. I smiled at Matthew. I held his hand on the couch while we watched TV. I let him complain about his boss and his commute and his stupid fantasy football team. I was patient. I was kind. I was the same Anna he had always known. But inside, I was counting down the hours. On Saturday night, I went to a bank. Not my normal bank. A private bank downtown, the kind with marble floors and people who call you ma'am. I withdrew something. Not money, something better. A small metal box that my father had given me on my 18th birthday. Inside the box was a ring. Not just any ring. A diamond ring. A 10-carat, flawless, emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to my great-grandmother. It was worth more than Patricia Crandall's entire house. I put the ring in my purse, and I waited. Sunday came. Cold and gray again, like the universe was setting the stage for something dramatic. Matthew wore his good sweater. He kept looking at me in the car, probably wondering why I seemed so calm. You okay? He asked. Perfect, I said. When we arrived at Patricia's house, I noticed that the driveway was full of cars, more than usual. Matthew had told me that his parents were inviting extra people tonight. His father's business partner, some neighbors, a few more of Patricia's bridge friends, a big crowd. Perfect, I thought, more witnesses. We walked inside. The house smelled like pot roast and cinnamon. Patricia came out of the kitchen wearing her best pearls. She hugged Matthew and kissed his cheek. She looked at me and said, Anna, you're here. Good, we need help in the kitchen. I smiled. Of course, Patricia, but first I want to introduce you to someone. She blinked. Introduce me to who? I turned toward the front door, which was just opening. Mr. Harrington walked in. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Patricia's dining room set. His silver hair was combed perfectly. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had been passed down through generations, because it had been. Patricia's mouth fell open. "Who is this?" "Mr. Harrington," I said. "My family's lawyer." "Your family's lawyer?" Patricia repeated, as if I had spoken a foreign language. Matthew came up behind me. He looked confused. "Anna, what's going on? You don't have a family lawyer. Your parents are middle class." I turned to look at him, really look at him. For the first time in 8 years, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger. A small, insecure man who had built himself up by tearing me down. "Sit down, Matthew," I said. "Everyone sit down, I have something to tell you." The living room was full now. Patricia and Richard, Claire and Dr. Frank, Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda, the neighbors, the bridge friends, more than 20 people, all staring at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Mr. Harrington set his briefcase on the coffee table. He opened it slowly, dramatically, like a magician about to perform a trick. He pulled out a stack of papers. The first one was a trust document with my name on it, Anna Marie Whitmore, beneficiary of the Whitmore Family Trust, established 1952. "What is this?" Patricia demanded. Her face was turning red. "Anna, explain yourself right now." I walked to the center of the room. I was still wearing my plain gray sweater. My old jeans, my scuffed shoes. I looked exactly like the poor, backward girl they thought I was, but I didn't feel poor. I felt powerful. "My full name," I said, speaking slowly and clearly so everyone could hear, "is Anna Marie Whitmore. My grandfather was Charles Whitmore. He founded Whitmore Logistics. My father was Thomas Whitmore. He ran the company until he retired 5 years ago. Together, they built a business worth approximately $400 million. The room went silent. I could hear the pot roast bubbling in the kitchen. I could hear Patricia's pearls clicking together as her hands started to shake. "That's not possible," Claire said. Her voice was high and tight. "You're a librarian, you drive a Honda." "I am a librarian because I love books," I said. "I drive a Honda because I like reliable cars. I wear this sweater because it's warm and comfortable. None of those things have anything to do with how much money I have." Matthew stood up. His face was pale. "You lied to me," he said. "For 8 years, you lied to me." I turned to face him. "I didn't lie, I just didn't tell you. There's a difference. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for my bank account. But you didn't love me, Matthew. You loved looking down on me." "That's not true," he said, but his voice cracked. "Isn't it?" I said. "Last Sunday, at this very table, you called me backward. You laughed at my clothes. You made me the joke of your family dinner. And not one of you defended me. Not one." Patricia stepped forward. Her face was still red, but now I saw something else in her eyes, fear, and something worse, greed. "Anna, dear," she said, her voice suddenly sweet and sticky like honey. "We didn't mean anything by it. We were just teasing. You know how families are." I smiled at her. A cold smile. The kind of smile my mother used to give to people who tried to manipulate her. "Oh, I know exactly how families are, Patricia. For example, I know that your grandfather's car dealership went bankrupt in 1987. I know that the house you're standing in has a second mortgage. I know that the pearls around your neck are fake. I had them appraised last month." Patricia's face went from red to white. "You what?" "I had them appraised," I repeated, "because I wanted to know exactly who I was dealing with, and now I know. You're not royalty, Patricia. You're not even upper middle class. You're a woman drowning in debt who built her entire identity on a lie." Claire stood up. "How dare you talk to my mother that way?" "How dare you?" I said, turning to her. "How dare you call me cheap when your husband's dental practice is 2 months away from bankruptcy? How dare you show off your fake diamonds at every dinner? I know about your finances, Claire. I know about everyone's finances. I've known for years." Dr. Frank looked at Claire. "What is she talking about?" Claire's face crumbled. "It's not true," she whispered. "She's lying." Mr. Harrington cleared his throat. He held up another paper. "I have bank statements, if anyone would like to see them." Claire's credit card debt alone is over $40,000. The dental practice has been operating at a loss for 3 consecutive years. "And Patricia and Richard?" He paused, looking at the older Crandalls with pity. "You have less than $10,000 in savings. Your retirement fund was cashed out 2 years ago to pay for this house's property taxes." Richard finally spoke. His voice was quiet and sad. "How do you know all this?" I looked at him. The only Crandall I felt even a little bit sorry for. Because I'm a librarian, Richard, I'm very good at research. And when your wife and daughter started treating me like dirt, I decided to learn everything about them. It wasn't hard. Most people's secrets are sitting right there on the internet if you know where to look. Matthew grabbed my arm. His fingers were tight. You can't do this, Anna. You can't just humiliate my family in their own home. I pulled my arm away. Humiliate them? Like you humiliated me last Sunday. Like you've humiliated me every Sunday for 8 years. No, Matthew, this isn't humiliation. This is the truth. And the truth is that you are nothing without me. You work a mid-level marketing job. You make $60,000 a year. You drive a car that your father bought for you. You live in an apartment that I pay half the rent for. You married me because I was easy to control, not because you loved me. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I wasn't done. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the small metal box. I opened it. The diamond ring caught the light and scattered it across the room like tiny stars. Everyone gasped. Even Mr. Harrington, who had seen the ring 100 times, looked impressed. This ring, I said, holding it up, has been in my family for 4 generations. It is worth more than everything in this room. More than this house. More than all your cars and all your jewelry and all your pathetic little investments combined. My mother wore this ring. My grandmother wore it. And one day, I will give it to my daughter. But none of you will ever touch it. None of you will ever benefit from my family's money. Patricia started crying, not real tears, the kind of tears that come from a tantrum. You're cruel, she sobbed. You're a cruel, cruel woman. No, I said. I'm a woman who finally stopped being kind to people who didn't deserve it. There's a difference. Matthew fell back into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. All the air was gone from him. What happens now? He asked. I looked at Mr. Harrington. He nodded and handed me a folder. I opened it and pulled out divorce papers. Now, I said, we end this. I am filing for divorce tomorrow morning. I am keeping the apartment. I am keeping my car. I am keeping every penny of my inheritance. And you, Matthew, will sign these papers without a fight. Because if you don't, I will use everything I know about your family to make sure none of you ever recover. Matthew's hands were shaking as he took the folder. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He already knew he had lost. Claire was crying now too, real tears maybe, or maybe just more performance, I couldn't tell anymore. Dr. Frank was whispering to her, his face hard and angry. Uncle Bob and Aunt Linda had slipped out the back door, smart enough to know they didn't want to be part of this. The neighbors and bridge friends were frozen in place, their mouths open, their eyes wide. Patricia stood in the middle of her living room, her fake pearls and her second mortgage and her bankrupt car dealership legacy, and she looked at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this, she said. One day, you'll be old and alone, and you'll regret what you did to this family. I walked toward the front door. Mr. Harrington followed me, closing his briefcase with a quiet click. I don't think I will, Patricia, I said. I think I'll be in my beach house in California, watching the sunset over the ocean, and I won't think about you at all. Goodbye. I opened the door. The cold November air hit my face. It felt like freedom. Matthew called my name. Anna, please, can we talk about this? I turned back one last time. I looked at him, sitting in his father's chair, surrounded by the ruins of the dinner party and the ruins of his family's pride. He looked small, smaller than I had ever seen him. You called me backward, Matthew, in front of everyone. You laughed at my clothes and my car and my love of seagulls. You made me the punchline of your life. And I let you. For 8 years, I let you, but not anymore. I walked out. Mr. Harrington held the door for me. We got into his car, a black Mercedes that purred like a happy cat, and we drove away. I didn't look back. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Matthew tried to fight it at first. He found a lawyer who promised to get him a settlement. But when Mr. Harrington sent over the evidence of Matthew's financial mismanagement, his secret credit card debt, and the text messages he had sent to his friends mocking me, the lawyer dropped him immediately. Matthew signed the papers on a Wednesday. I never saw him again. Patricia tried to call me. Several times, I let each call go to voicemail. The messages started out angry, then became pleading, then became desperate. She wanted money. She wanted me to help the family. She wanted me to forget everything and come back to Sunday dinners like nothing had happened. I deleted every message without listening to the end. Claire sent me a letter, handwritten, which was surprising. She apologized. She said she had been jealous of me because I seemed so content with so little, while she had everything and was still miserable. She said she was getting therapy. She said she hoped I could forgive her someday. I kept the letter. I didn't forgive her, but I kept the letter. Dr. Frank left Claire 6 months after the dinner. I heard about it through the grapevine. He took the children. Claire moved into a small apartment and got a job at a hair salon. Patricia and Richard lost their house to the bank. They moved into a rental unit in a town nobody had heard of. Matthew lost his job when his boss found out about the embezzlement. Not the kind that sends you to prison, just the kind that gets you fired. He moved to another state, or so I was told. He remarried quickly, a woman who worked at a car dealership. I smiled when I heard that, a car dealership. Patricia would have hated it. As for me, I bought a small bookstore. Not a gallery this time. A bookstore. A cozy, warm, wonderful bookstore with a couch in the corner and a cat named Seagull. I named it backward, and I hung a sign on the door that said, "Everyone is welcome here. No exceptions." The first customer who came in on opening day was an old woman with kind eyes and a worn coat. She asked me if I had any books about birds. I led her to the nature section. She told me she had been watching seagulls at the beach for 40 years and still hadn't gotten tired of them. I almost cried, but I didn't. I just smiled and handed her a book and said, "Me too."